conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-25-20, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. The Board of Education will conduct this meeting as a teleconference. Remote access to the Board of Education regular board meeting in compliance with the Governor Newsom's executive order in response to the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak. The district will conduct this regular meeting as teleconference. Please use the following toll-free numbers. Open session 615-2020, telephone 1-669-900-9128, meeting ID 843-4607-1735 with the password of 639112, or join on computer and that is printed for you. Public comment can be submitted via email to the superintendent's office at superintendent.tusd.org. And I do have a couple of commentaries. Submissions will be read aloud at the public meeting by me. Submissions can be received prior to the start of the open session. The guidelines for public comment will be in accordance with Board Policy 2350. Thank you, Mrs. Reagans.
Thank you, Dr. Mannon. I want you all to know that I actually have copied this front page and sent it to people when they have said there's nothing that says how to contact or to get involved in the meeting now that it's virtual. And it's pretty clear here as to exactly what you need to do. So folks are pretty receptive to that. So we will resume open session. We have been in closed session, and I do have a report out from closed session. And that has to do with someone else who just joined us. I see her there. Hi, Jenna. The Board of Education in closed session voted unanimously to approve the following administrative appointment effective July 1st, 2020. Jenna Murata has served as an assistant principal at South High School since 2016. She previously served as a resource teacher for guided reading from July 2015 to July 2016, instructional coach for guided reading from September 2015 to June 2015, English language development coordinator at North High School from September 2004 to June 2015, and English language development teacher at North High from September 1997 to June 2013. She received her Bachelor of Arts in English with a communication studies emphasis and a specialization in business and administration at the University of California at Los Angeles in September 1997, and her Master of Arts in Education in Educational Administration at Concordia University, Irvine in August 2015. We would like to congratulate Jenna on this appointment and welcome her. She's here tonight, so she'll even give us a few words of amazing joining us. What do you have to say for us tonight, Jenna?
President Reagans, members of the board, Dr. Mannon, Dr. Stowe, and members of the cabinet, it is with great excitement and humility that I step into the role of principal at West High School. As you may already know, I am a graduate, former ASB president, and drill team captain of West High. My daughter is a recent graduate of West, and I have 3 sons who are students at West, Jefferson Middle School, and Anza Elementary. My husband is also a pastor at a church right down the street from West High. We are a warrior family through and through, and I'm so honored to be the next leader of the amazing school that prepared me to become the person I am today. I am grateful for all of the TUSD leaders who continue to invest in mentoring and supporting me, and I look forward to making that same investment in the students and teachers of West High. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am a product of the tradition of excellence at West, and I am proud to continue that tradition as the new principal of West High. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome.
Miss you at South.
Always them too.
You can come visit now and then. Yeah, that's close enough.
Your poor kids, now Mom is principal.
That will be a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
But welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will continue with the meeting, and thank you for no one reminding me that we needed to adopt the agenda. I do need a motion and a second for adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. And Jenna was with us. Thank you for zooming in, by the way, Jenna. That was nice of you to take the time and effort to do that. And we'll be seeing you probably more often once you are in your new position. So thank you for doing that.
You can click out of it. You don't have to watch the rest of it. You can go do something fun. Yeah.
Oh, she wants to stay with us, Dr. Lee.
Doctor,
Dr. Lee.
waiting for that, 100 times.
You've been promoted before. So we will move on to our staff presentation and information item, which is the TUSD reopening of schools status. Actually, it's the task force status update, I think, is what it should say. And that's Dr. Stowe.
Thank you, Mrs. Reagans and members of the board. Tonight, we will present to you the first of what is going to be many conversations around the reopening for what this may look like. Mr. Mara is going to share a presentation on the screen. I first want to say that having virtually visited all 30 schools, 31 including launch, over the course of the past few weeks, I have been able to reiterate with the staff at all the schools how special it has been to here in the community to be able to see firsthand the kind of work that our teachers did in transitioning to an online learning environment in what is clearly a unique situation that we did not anticipate. And so praising them and making sure that they know that somebody's got their mic on. Sorry, I get a lot of feedback. So just to let them know what a great job that everyone did coming together as a team. This included our maintenance operations staff, all the custodial, the administrators and clerical at the sites. Truly was a collective effort, and I believe that that everyone recognizes that. More challenging, however, as we look forward to the reopening of school, is it's a bit of a moving target. And we are reacting to different information that's coming to us from the Department of Public Health, from the state, and from the County Office of Education. And we have built this template that I'm going to review tonight here with the structure is based on the county template. And like I said, it's the first overview of what you will see as it relates to possible reopening. I am going to recommend to the board that we schedule another meeting on June 29th to go into additional detail based on questions and direction that you provide to us tonight, additional information that we receive, having a few weeks where school is not in session that we can devote to more detail and putting information in here, as well as on the 29th, as we'll discuss later in the meeting, the budget for the state. And so if we can move on to the next slide, you'll see that what the work of this team and each cabinet member is going to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the section and the committee that they're leading. But the task force and charge was to develop a plan for safely reopening schools to maximize learning and the emotional well-being of our students and our employees. And so we have approached in this very similar to many other districts in which we're in touch with as to gathering information, engaging stakeholders, really trying to figure out how to best reopen, because we believe that students learn better when they are in front of a teacher physically, and we are also able to support them in ways not just academically, but socio-emotional as well. So really looking at this in how to make make school physically reopen, realizing that there are many constraints that we are going to approach, and that that we by reopening school physically, it doesn't eliminate the potential spread of COVID-19, but it would reduce by following these recommendations, it would reduce the chances that that there is a spread among students or on campus. So here is the structure for the task force. We have weekly meetings on Monday where the representatives go through and get updates from each of the committees. We have 5 committees, and each of those committees have subcommittees that meet on a regular basis throughout each week, then coming back to the task force and providing updates. Again, it's, you know, we've been working for about 4 weeks, and it seems that every week presents new questions and things that we need to explore. And so by having this conversation with you tonight and getting some feedback and your questions and ideas for further study, we will go back and then bring more information in a couple weeks. So the committee is made up of cabinet members, district employees from across the district office, as well as the sites, and a couple of parents that are on the task force that represent the PTA. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Crumpy, who is going to go into the details around the instruction committee.
Thanks, Dr. Stowe. As Tim said, you know, really the instruction committee has been focusing on how we maximize student learning through these multiple stages of reopening our schools in August, taking into account that we don't really know what it's going to look like. We know based on the guidance today, but we don't know what that guidance is going to be. In fact, I'm at a meeting tomorrow morning at LACO to receive even additional guidance. And so really, how do we do that and continue to maximize student learning? That question has been what the instructional committee and the subcommittees from that have been tackling over the past few weeks. I think our biggest emphasis has been, and as I present tonight, is not on decisions that they're making or recommendations that they have, but they do have some of those recommendations. But really, we're discussing the pros and cons of each possible instructional strategy that we might provide, or the possible school structure. What is it going to look like? That way, we really feel that based on whatever the situation is, that we've really heard from as many of our stakeholders as possible. We'll have as much contribution as possible. And so when we have to turn on a dime and make a change, and we're planning for that. We know things are in such flux that we think we're going to have enough information from our groups to be able to do that to the best of our ability. Our instructional committee breakdown might be just a little deceiving. At least half our committee are also parents of Torrance students. We also have our DCC, our District Communication Committee, which is made up of an elected officer of every school site council. And our DELMAC, our English Learner Parent Advisory Committee, are contributing and are part of the discussions about our school opening. We plan to hold as many meetings as we can with these groups and other groups as we have additional information arises. I think our next slide, Gail, please. Our subcommittees that you see here, we have 4. I'm working on selection of instruction and instructional delivery models, how we serve our special populations of kids, how do we extend learning opportunities? That's that lost learning. How are we going to be ready for the lost learning that we know has happened throughout these last few months? How are we going to assess and know that? And what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to be able to extend learning and accelerate some of those learning gaps as we return to school in whatever way, shape, or form it looks like? And finally, we know, and I know it's going to be talked about later, but the extracurricular activities are so important. Our athletic programs, our arts programs, and we want to make sure that we're taking all input from all of our committees into account. There are subcommittees of the subcommittees. We're just going to call them groups for tonight. There's almost 150 additional teachers and site folks that are participating in these. Most are in 9 different groups that are working on within grade level spans, K1, 2, 3, middle school. And they're really focusing on those pros and cons that I discussed earlier. Next slide, Gil, please. Because 76% of our families indicated that they have an intent to return to school, the committee is really focused on a discussion around a hybrid design. Knowing that we can only have limited number of kids in a classroom, what does that look like? Where students might attend school part of the week, but learn from home for part of the week. What does that look like? And I am telling you, I'm impressed with the discussions that these groups have been having. After multiple thorough discussions, 9 of 13 grade levels prefer an alternative day model as opposed to an AM/PM model, meaning half the number of students at the school would come on one day, half would come on another day. All of our middle schools, our high schools, and our 2nd and 3rd grade teacher teams are preferring that option when they're weighing the pros and cons. Our K1 and our 4-5 teachers still prefer an AM/PM model, and we continue those discussions with them. I think one of the things we're wanting to focus on with the pros and cons is also being able to, how do we address those cons? We know there's going to be disadvantages with whatever solution. When we can't, as I think Dr. Stowe mentioned, we know we do best with all kids in front of us all day, every day. Knowing that that is a slim possibility, but a slim possibility at this point, you know, how do we minimize those cons as much as possible? And so that's our ongoing focus. Next slide, Gil, or final slide for me, I should say. We also learn from our families that some of them continue to want to learn from home. For this reason, we're really hoping to implement a TUSD elementary virtual school for our elementary families. I'm going to go back to that for a second, but 6-12, we're just beginning to have these conversations on what it will look like or could look like. And so I just want to mention, you know, just a couple things with the K-5. Most of our area districts, I think everyone is looking at some of these similar options. We could purchase a prepackaged program, and we think we can do better. So we're hoping that we can create, with our own textbooks, our own content, our own supplemental materials with our own teachers, a program that will really maximize not only the learning when they're learning from home, but when they return to school, that then they will have the same materials and platforms and resources to try to minimize and mitigate the change as kids are in flux so often. Lastly, the home hospital and independent study is on there. We will continue to have those for our specific short-term needs as appropriate for those students. And I think on to next slide is Mr. Mara.
Good evening. So I am heading the operations committee, and as you see here, this is the makeup of each of our groups. There are 5 subcommittees that have been meeting weekly, and they include facilities, budget finance, campus cleaning, nutrition services, transportation, and my department, information technology. So the main goal of operations, you know, obviously instruction is important, but it's to make sure that the safety and well-being of our faculty, students, and our families that may visit us are thought of and are paramount. So with regards to facilities, making sure that we have the proper signage. Again, going back to the guidance we've been receiving from CDC, CDE, LACO, and then compiling all of that and making sure that are our facilities ready based on the recommendations we've received? Are they in their best shape possible so that we're welcoming the folks back, the students back in a safe place? And that one of the big pieces is arranging our classrooms so that we meet the social distancing guidelines. Same thing with our cleaning practices, coming up with our protocols and procedures for cleaning the campus during lunch, before, after lunch, or even as students move from one class to the next, or if they're being allowed to share devices like a Chromebook, you know, what's the procedure what are the approved cleaning methods to clean material that the students may be sharing, knowing that we want to actually limit sharing of equipment and devices between the students. Under nutrition services, a lot is dependent from what we get out of the instructional model, whether it's AM, PM, or a alternating day schedule. That impacts hugely on how nutrition services and how we deliver meals to the students. For example, when we look at pros and cons, AM and PM will give you a little break that allows you to clean, but not as quickly if you had AM and PM. How do you clean up after the students have their meals, whether in the classroom or outside of the classroom? And if you have alternating days, how do you feed the students, which will require to feed during the days they're not at school? So we're still waiting on the USDA to provide a waiver that says we can give multiple meals on a single day that would cover 2 or 3 days worth of meals. Transportation is also affected depending on the instructional model we come up with. In transportation, we transport about 400 students that are special needs. And so depending on AM, PM, or alternating day, we'll either need more bus routes or fewer bus routes or more contracted services, depending on that. Also in transportation, how do we continue to clean the buses and keep them disinfected and sanitized as students come in and out of the buses? And also you also need social distancing within the buses. So you can only transport about half of the students at a time. So again, possibly needing to look at the schedules quite a bit more. Information technology in my area, we were pretty much put in the right there on March 16th. Technology was it's kind of important. You needed to deliver instruction right away starting March 16th. So I think we've actually been in the heat of it quite a bit in providing support to our teachers that were at home, and then supporting our families also who are trying to get online, get on a Zoom or get on Google Meet. So we're continuing to work with instruction on how best we fine tune our technology so that we can deliver the best instruction we can remotely or even in place. If we're going to live stream, if we're going to continue with the synchronous and asynchronous learning, which I think we will, technology will continue to look at all the all the needs there. And another piece on the technology, we distributed 60 hotspots to our needy families, those that had accessibility issues with not having fast enough internet or not having internet at all. And I believe we distributed more than 3,000 Chromebooks to the homes. So a lot of the families will continue to keep the Chromebooks. Actually, over the summer, we only collected the Chromebooks back for students that were moving on to another school or leaving our district. So that is most of operations. It's a big piece. I just wanted to give you something to look at, tangible. We did a mock-up of a classroom at Arnold Elementary. So if you're trying to provide 6-foot distancing between the students, in this particular classroom at Arnold, room 8, we were able to get in 14 students. Okay, so this is a mock-up of what it looks like to get 14 students. You've got that blue tape down the middle. So imagine a student, maybe everyone on the left is the A cohort and everyone on the right is the B cohort, right? And so that's what we've been looking at. This is a basic, typical classroom. We also have a lot of specialty classroom, SDC, places at launch and Tykes where facilities is going in there and we're doing mock-ups of those classrooms. Secondary and even especially at the high schools where class sizes may be a little bigger and also larger class sizes. We're starting mock-ups in those classrooms this week. So that's just one little piece right here. And that is operations.
Thank you, Gil. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Human Resources Health and Safety Committee. You'll also see as I talk through this that our committees are overlapping, and I think they'll continue to overlap as we continue to focus on our mission and objective, and the resources that we're using are the same. So guidance from the CDE, guidance from LACO, guidance from the health department, and as Dr. Crumpy indicated, we'll continue to receive updates as we will tomorrow from LACO. The committee consists of about 27 members, and you see who they are there. And similar to the other committees, a lot of these folks wear multiple hats. So you'll see a health assistant, for instance, that may also be a parent, lots of employees and different folks, in addition to teachers receiving information from the site that may be other teachers or other district employees. Next slide. I'd like to talk a little bit regarding what each subcommittee is covering to help you understand a little bit of the subcommittee subtopics that we've been focusing on. So for instance, looking at safety within facilities, that subcommittee is specifically looking at a variety of things, including protective barriers, plexiglass, signage, hand washing stations, etc. So those conversations are continuing within that subcommittee. And as a matter of fact, they're continuing with operations as well now. Within the risk management, we're looking at protective equipment for individuals, such as face coverings, first aid, hand sanitizers, etc. Within contingency planning, we're looking at a variety of things, and this is a big subcommittee because they're tackling the tasks that include contact tracing, looking at the facility overall and the health office, how to help the health office organize in such a way where they're able to assist kids, whether or not they scraped the knee, or they're coming in with a fever or showing some other symptoms. We're also talking about what happens if we have to close and what happens if we have to reopen an office or a classroom or a building. We're looking at self-quarantine and isolation. The Training and Information Sharing Committee, we've expanded that a little bit to include other adults. Some of the questions that we've heard include, are volunteers allowed on campus? Are adults allowed on campus that are actually not working on the campus? What's the essential volunteer? Looking overall to maintain, of course, training, information, sharing information, updates to all faculty and staff, students, parents, etc. So this kind of goes back to a little bit with the safety within facilities committee. Protocols in the front office, protocols again regarding volunteers and visitors, and how far onto the campus does that individual get? Do they have to follow the same protocols? Do they have to complete the same training, etc.? The school day, looking at social distancing, the 6 feet, bell schedules, passing periods, looking at the classroom. Gil showed you a picture of the classroom and a sample of what that would look like, depending on the size of the classroom, as long as social distancing is being maintained, looking at the school day overall. And then the 6th subcommittee is entitled Personnel. And that particular committee is looking at board policies and administrative rules, specifically as it relates to employees and personnel. We're looking at the collective bargaining agreements for all 4 of our unions. We're also looking at leaves more specifically, in addition to HR 6201, the Families First Emergency Act in response to COVID. Looking at employee and employer rights. So for instance, an employee that wants to take a leave, we would have to look at specifically their entitlement to a leave and make sure it refers back to the collective bargaining agreement. Make sure that we're still maintaining the safety necessary, but that we're getting the work done that needs to be completed. And we're probably going to be talking within that committee about collective bargaining agreement language and potentially memorandums of understanding, and specifically as it relates to leaves and returning to work, and any other topic or subtopic that specifically responds to personnel and the return of personnel to work, being their office, being the classroom, being the facility. That completes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Liberati. This is Edon Kim, and I am the chair of the Family and Community Engagement Committee. Our committee is made up of 28 individual stakeholders, and you can see the various representation that they all hold. I'd like to just quickly highlight our 9 community members. Being the Family and Community Engagement Committee, it's not surprising that we do have a large number of community members. They represent a variety of municipal and private organizations, business leaders, and they include people from the City of Torrance, Torrance Police Department, Public Library, and the Parks and Rec Department. Also from the Chamber of Commerce, Los Angeles County, Torrance Ed Foundation, and the YMCA. Next slide, please. The Family and Community Engagement Committee is made up of 3 different subcommittees. The first is called Communication Systems. And so this group will help provide unified information to all stakeholders in the school district and community. It'll be the central communication hub for the entire task force and all 5 of its committees. And they will be disseminating information about the return to school. The second subcommittee is called Community Partnerships. They've already collected many helpful resources for families and helped identify a variety of methods for informing families, so including email, websites, and mailers. They will also assist in presentations and trainings. The third subcommittee is called Key Systems and Supports, and their primary goal is to help TUSD partner with various groups such as the City Parks and Rec Department, the YMCA, Torrance Tykes Preschool, and TUSD Adult Ed Division in order to help provide before, during, and after school childcare and activities for families that need it. This subcommittee will also identify district resources such as facilities and personnel that it can assist in providing supervision. Thank you. That's my part.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Good evening, everyone. So the committee that I was responsible for is the Social and Emotional Support Systems Committee. And as you can see, this committee included a large group of folks. In particular, it references 11 school site employees. And I just want to make note that the majority of them are counselors and what I would say are support providers directly involved on a daily basis with social and emotional supports for our students. And again, in there, we also have several parents, classroom teachers, classified staff, paraeducators who also work very closely with kids. So we had quite a wide range of influence in this group. Next slide, please. So we have 5 subcommittees, and the first being school-based mental health services, which essentially focused on the work in which those various providers conduct on a daily basis with students. Behavior support systems, their emphasis included positive behavior intervention systems, also known as PBIS, which would be an acronym many of you are familiar with, in addition to the kinds of behaviors that also are signs of a student demonstrating a need for further support. As Dr. Kim mentioned, their support of family engagement, we also emphasized the efforts necessary there to work with other committees to ensure that what we're doing to support our students, that we include ways in which we outreach and communicate effectively with our community and families. Staff supports, that's also assuming that, you know, what behaviors and trauma our students are influenced by, that there's a great possibility that we have people who work in our organization who maybe are hurting or feeling anxious in ways that are new to them. And so staff supports is a particular subcommittee that focused on ways in which we can provide our teachers, certificated and classified staff with opportunities to get their own support and be helped in ways in which might help them more effective in their job or give them access to the things that support them in their personal life. And then, of course, tradition and keeping things as normal as possible. Dr. Crumpy previously mentioned some of the extracurricular activities. And as you all know, we most recently went through quite a different graduation and end of year experience. And so this is a group of folks who are making sure that we maintain the ways in which we normally transition into a school year, whether students are working at school or online or back and forth between both. We're considering all possibilities and making sure we keep things as normal as possible and maybe even come up with some new traditions and ways to recognize people. Thank you.
So at this point in time, it's available for the board to ask questions and comment and give us some of your thoughts and feedback to provide some direction as to what you would like us to bring back to you on the 29th.
Mrs. Reagan, may I go first?
Actually, before you go, Mr. Gerson, I just wanted to share a couple of hard copy letters that I received. And I think that they actually show the exact opposite ends of the spectrum with what we're dealing with in terms of trying to determine how and when and where and why to reopen our school district. Can somebody do a 3-minute time? And if I run over, stop me. Mr. Hahn, maybe, do you have a timer with you or?
I do.
Okay, so do 3 minutes. I don't think it'll take longer than that, but just in case.
Sure.
The first is from Sarah and Steve Froelich. I think it's Froelich rather than Frolic. And they say, Dear Mrs. Reagans, please let our children return to school next year. My 2 children attend Victor Elementary School and will be going into 4th and 2nd grades in the 2021 school year. I'm writing as a concerned parent that school may not return traditional physical classes in September or have so many restrictions that education is not plausible. Teachers and staff have done a remarkable job with the challenges and changes faced during this year. However, the toll that homeschool is taking on my kids emotionally, psychologically, socially, financially, and educationally is unacceptable. Online learning or homeschool is subpar to a in-school physical learning in my experience and opinion. Doing dozens and dozens of worksheets at home is not the same as in-class teaching. I work with my children at school to supplement the online curriculum, but not all children have this privilege. Children with 2 working parents, those in lower socioeconomic status and those in abusive and neglectful homes are at extreme risk of falling behind in school or worse. My children cry frequently, expressing their frustration regarding homeschooling or being forced to wear masks and not socialize with other children when they return. Additionally, I will likely have to quit work to stay at home with my kids if there is no school or a modified schedule that will take a financial toll on my family. Please do not base your decision to let our children return to school on fear and not facts. Our children deserve better than decisions based on hypothetical circumstances and hysteria. The fact is, children 18 and under are extremely unlikely to have serious or deadly effects from COVID, much less the flu. The plan was to flatten the curve to not overwhelm hospitals, which has been successful. Now it's time to reopen schools. We do not close schools for flu or other viruses. I recall last year many children at Victor were sick. Several children were out in both of my son's classrooms, but the school remained open. Elderly people with comorbidities are always at risk from these viruses. This is not new. For older teachers, families which grandparents take care of children or those who are scared to interact with others, there can be exceptions made to families to continue online learning if they wish or transfer to actual homeschool programs. If the school district is concerned about lawsuits, create a waiver to sign for those who want to return to traditional unmodified class. I will be willing to sign a waiver for my child to attend school as normal. Please consider the best interest of our children in this situation. Solutions do not need to be complicated. Keep classrooms independent, eliminate assemblies for a while, send a class home if the child tests positive, Have each child return after a 14-day quarantine with a doctor note. There's no need to punish all children if none or few are sick. Let our children return to normal class for 2021. So that's one end of the spectrum. Thank you to the Frolics for sending that. The second one actually is from Denise Miller. She says, Dear Mrs. Reagans, first of all, I apologize for sending this email because I couldn't find the information to join the meeting. I did send that information to her, by the way. As a parent and teacher in Torrance, I'm extremely concerned about decisions that have been taken without the genuine input of teachers. I would like a chance to voice my concerns primarily as an educator here at the board meeting, but it refers to doing that via email, and there is no email address, so she wrote to me. Here are some things to consider. Torrance has been and continues to be what my doctor calls a hotbed of COVID-19, with increasing numbers of confirmed cases. If the truth is that the virus continues, testing is not even close to what the state says it should be, people are still getting sick and dying. Into this, we plan to send our teachers and children with basically only social distancing and masks. What happens when they need to blow their noses, sharpen a pencil, work with a classmate? One of the main reasons parents want their kids back is that they need to go back to work, and schools are a good place to put their children. However, it may not be a safe place because no one may be able to make it a safe place at this time and under these circumstances. Even LA Unified, whom we seem to feel obliged to follow lockstep, recognizes the dangers and the difficulties of setting up safe schools in the time that remains before August and maybe continuing distance learning. Ironically, either the alternating day or half-day exposure considered by TUSD leaves these parents without the childcare options, which led so many to support a return to school. It exposes teachers and children to the virus and offers some strange hybrid education. The mere consideration of a combination of distance and in-school learning highlights that neither is satisfactory. One, not allowing the interactions so important to social development and the best teacher-student bonding, and the other exposing teachers and students to a highly dangerous, highly infectious virus that many experts feel is going to make an even stronger appearance in the fall and winter. As this does not even take into consideration that the prep required for in-class and distance learning are quite different, the latter taking quite a long time per session. Why can't someone just say the emperor has no clothes? We are not able, and indeed few schools in our area are truly able to offer a safe working environment for teachers or a safe learning environments for students. Parents have responded favorably to a return to school and are not aware of the time of the details of the hybrid program proposed should be recanvassed in light of this option. Truly, TUSD should spend its time and reduced resources on improving our distance learning program for at least the first half of the school year. Parents who need childcare should ask City of Torrance to open and arrange programs for children if that's what they need. Consider that students and teachers forced back onto campus will undoubtedly bring lawsuits should anyone become ill of the virus that can be traced to campus that was known not to be safe and able to protect them during the school year. And finally, TUSD is not LAUSD. We did an amazing job and made sure our students got access to the internet and Chromebooks. We provided a no frills, but definitely standards-based education, which will hold.
Terry.
Okay. So that those
Mrs.
are the
Reagans,
two ends of the spectrum.
Mrs. Reagans, excuse me, I also have an email from a member of the public.
Okay, please read it.
TUSD virtual school. This is a K-5 opportunity where parents serve as the learning coach with support from a Torrance Unified School District teacher who will support you and your student weekly or monthly if desired. This is not a prepackaged curriculum. All lessons are being created with all Torrance Unified School District current curriculum and supplemental materials to maximize your child's eventual return to school. Question. Considering this opportunity comes with created curriculum by TUSD and support is given only weekly or monthly, who facilitates/oversees the program? Is it facilitated by current classroom teachers that would responsible for 27 students as in a hybrid model, or will TUSD TOSAs and or RTI teachers oversee the program? If it is the latter, this could result in layoffs of current classroom teachers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mannon. So that's it for our community input at this point. And I believe that Mr. Gerson, you asked to speak first.
Thank you. Before I start my questions, I really want to thank those two parents who not only gave us their honest opinions, but signed their name to it. I've seen too much anonymous and run, and I really respect both of these parents. You know, whether you agree with them or not, their courage to come forward and speak their truth is greatly appreciated. It
Yes.
helps me do my job better. So thank you to both of you. So I have a bunch of questions. I should also preface before moving forward, because of the statements made by the parents, I can't count how many hundreds of hours the cabinet has been on with all the different experts at the county and the state and constant meetings. And the five of us have also been in constant meetings. I've seen many of you in meetings with Dr. Ferrer, and we luckily just had a recent meeting with her expert in children and teens. And so I know we're all trying to become as educated on the issue and make the best decisions that we can. And it's very challenging. And I don't think that there's one right answer for all people. And so that's the basis of some of my questions. I've been very hungry for information about the task force. And so I'd like to ask some questions and give some feedback. First is, I saw a memo on kind of philosophy that concerned me. So the results of the responses from parents showed us that 43% definitely wanted to return to a traditional school setting, with 32.5% leaning that way. And on the flip side, we had 10% who definitely wanted virtual learning, with another 14% that were leaning that way. And so the philosophy in the memo that I saw said that 14% was possibly something that if in-class was set up appropriately, that we could shift them over to an in-school model. And that offended me because I believe that the likely to stay virtual and the likely to come back should be treated equally in their philosophies. So in my mind, a good model that offered the best for both sides, those people who chose to remain virtual would offer up and open up more space to help with the scheduling on the other side for those who want to be at school. And so I'm really hoping that through the process, we can find an excellent, the best we can do for both sides of the issue. In reading the instructional committee portion, and Dr. Crumpy touched on it just a little bit, but I really feel that the parents are really underrepresented too much on the instruction side. I think 23 teachers is an extreme, but I'm really happy to see that they have such active participation. I don't know which ones wear both hats, but I really feel that there needs to be a lot more of the parent input to remain, to make sure that the programs that we are coming up with from our school mindset fits into the parent mindset, so that both sides of the parenting issue can be happy, or as happy as they can be made. So that was my first thing. Dr. Crumpy, I have two questions, well, three. So I know that there are 9 district office employees. Is either one of Gil's IT staff, Rob or Phil, is someone representing the technology? How far can we push the technology when it's raised inside the instruction committee?
So the process that we're using is that the committees talk to each other even throughout the meeting. So we've set up kind of like a shared doc, if you will, where we talk back and forth with each other I would say in real time, but also part of our task force weekly updates include all of the questions for the different subcommittees. So I think while a lot of our teachers are very technologically savvy and are representing the different structures and the different options in place, when questions arise, then we provide them over to operations and Gil's IT committee for response.
Okay. I just know that, especially when we get into the virtual school and online learning academy as they're listed, want to make sure that if we're pushing the envelope of technology or have to increase whatever access we have, that we are having those conversations. Speaking of which, on the TUSD virtual school, I think the teacher who wrote in hit my thoughts on that. So let me just focus on the 612 TUSD Online Learning Academy. So it says students will learn from home with virtual or in-class weekly meetings. Already I'm seeing in-class, which is not Online Learning Academy. So I know that there's an entire slide on the other side. I hope that the details on these will be greatly enhanced, and that the option here will not be that, oh, you can have a great program if you show up, but a weaker program or an abandoned program on the other side. I want to make sure that, I don't know, once a week or once a month. I don't think our parents are, I don't see it as the TUSD homeschool model. It's the virtual school model. And so I'm really hoping to see more support from our teaching staff for parents. You know, I'm very fortunate that my daughter was very productive on her own and didn't need monitoring, but my son needed a great deal of monitoring and would not have been as successful without his amazing teacher support. So I'm hoping to see more of that. The other piece that I don't see in here is what happens when there's a class or school closure, when there's a small outbreak within the facility, or we have a wave 2 that even shuts our district down. Torrance has always remained really low based on total population, and we've been a very fortunate community, very fortunate because, you know, being suburban, being educated, I think we've dodged a lot of bullets on that, but that's not to say that we're immune or that it won't come. And I don't yet see the contingency for the sharp pivot, and I'm hoping to see that in the next one as well. Mr. Mara on operations. So I see that there's one school site employee included. Could you give what class of employee, what their job is?
We have a Candace who's a staff assistant.
A staff assistant? All right.
Yes.
Because I heard a lot of things happening in operations. We're talking about cleaning, but I didn't see a custodian. So you have a secretary. I know we're talking about cleaning buses, but I didn't hear anything about a bus driver. There really isn't much classified that I see in the operations committee. I don't know. I feel like you should request the task force assign some more classified employees to the operations committee. I also had a question about your mock-up. So I saw the room kind of packed with as many students as we could fit in, but in the front I saw the chart paper. It kind of like a teacher could squeeze in the middle there. So if we maximize this setup, are we looking at teachers not using whiteboards or only having to use digital displays? Is that what I was kind of seeing from the picture?
Let me go back to the members on the subcommittees. So each of these subcommittees is actually run by, so transportation is run by Mark Plum, our director of transportation.
Okay.
Campus cleaning is Richard Vasquez, who heads custodial and that group. So he's got folks under him who he's communicated with. Facilities is Ian Kempton, right? So all of maintenance and facilities. So he's got a lot of voices under himself. And of course, there's myself and IT, and then Tim overseeing budget. So it's not just, so each of those subcommittees have met on their own with their own groups of folks. So there are other representatives in those areas.
So once we get past the committee phase to the subcommittee phase, there's additional people.
Yeah, there's.
All right.
There are like subcommittees to the subcommittees. So there are a ton of people under this group here.
Good, because we can't see that, and I want to make sure that they're getting into those things that I wouldn't think of.
Right. But yeah, we've gotten a lot of input from their groups.
Good.
Going back to the mock-up
Yes.
to the classroom. So our average classroom space is about 960 square feet.
Right.
So without completely emptying the classroom, which then you could probably squeeze in maybe another couple students, we wanted to give some space to allow teachers to continue to use some of their supplies, because they said they still need, access to their supplies, not have it completely stored away somewhere in a library or a cafeteria. So what we did, and this was a classroom that was fairly empty already, removing the kidney table, and that's become a bit of an issue. That's a question, what do we do without our kidney table? Because normally that's where we do our guided reading, for example. But by not emptying everything, allowing them, there was kind of that balance between allowing them to keep some supplies, getting the 6 foot distance, and getting 14 students in there, assuming, about a max class of 28 students. So there's been a lot of back and forth as to what do we need to empty from the classroom, because, we did request that, being we have limited amount of time, the custodial crew will have to get in there and start rearranging the furniture. So as folks remove their non-essential items from the classroom, what do you need in the classroom to begin teaching, what's essential August 26th when the kids come back. So they removed most of what they could and stored it, either took it home or found a place to store it in the school. And, so what you saw is about as good as it can get, balancing between giving them some storage space in the classroom and then fitting the number of students in there. But yeah, it as you move from classroom to classroom, some teachers will have 2 or 3 teaching areas or desks, right? This one, she had one desk where she kind of worked from as far as her workspace and her workstation. So some classrooms are going to be more of a challenge for our custodial folks than others, just because of the amount of supplies and things that they're storing in the class. And then the kindergarten classrooms are even more different because they've got the tables, right? And an area rug where they sit. So Ian and Richard have been in there also trying to work up mock-ups for those classrooms.
So I don't know, I guess I'm still a little confused as far as teaching area, as far as whiteboard use are all digital, but that, I guess that will come up out of instruction when they address the mock-ups. I don't want to take up all the time. So, well, let me, first of all, it was great. Thank you for also including the information. So you said we handed out 60 hotspots to families that needed internet access. And did you say 3,000 Chromebooks?
About 3,000, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, but probably even a little more as I extrapolate out, because I know some handed out. I think each school gave out almost close to 100 or more. So yeah, about 3,000. And almost no questions asked. I mean, if you really needed a device, the principals were really good at working with the families and identifying the need and getting the Chromebooks out to the parents. And then I worked with the Family Welcome and Enrollment Center along with Katie to determine the families that needed internet access at home. So it took a few weeks to get those ordered because everyone in the world was trying to buy a hotspot, and we finally got a hold of ours. So.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Liberati, for Human Resources, Health and Safety, again, I saw 7 teachers and 1 parent. I don't know, I would think that we could get a couple more parents. When I think of school site council, we usually have the same number of teachers as parents. And I don't know, I see just too many parents missing and would like to get a few more. What do we have in the way of classified employees? For example, I heard you talking about visitors, which would affect secretaries. How are classified represented on your subcommittees?
Certainly. So I mentioned out of that 27 there, we probably have 6 or 7 parents that are not noted as parents, but they're parents because they're noted as district employees, but they have kids in the district as well. Site principals, at least one of those is also a parent. 7 teachers, at least 3 of those are also parents. So we've got them focused in this way, but they do wear multiple hats. On the committee, it does include CSCA 19, CSCA 845, SEIU Local 99, and TTA. It includes, I want to say, 6 or 7 classified employees, including the health assistant, paraeducator, 2 paraeducators, LVN. So they speak for as union representatives, but also are able to, as I mentioned, go back and speak. I've been asked whether or not they could go back and speak to other folks at the campus as a teacher, going back to speak to other teachers, going back to the office and speaking to other folks in the office. And my answer to that is, of course, yes, you can. And similar to what you've heard from other committees, we have subcommittees, and there's subs in there as well. We tend to lose focus if we have that many people represented, but certainly they go back and speak to folks, and they then bring back those ideas to start focusing in on what our mission needs to be. But of course, bringing the concerns to us allows us to be able to speak about those concerns and then continue to look at the frameworks, at the guidance, at the protocols, et cetera, to make sure that we're responding to the needs of folks, to their concerns, to their safety issues.
I'm glad that on the subcommittees, I'm hearing a lot more classified and parent involvement. Dr. Kim, thank you. I see 3 teachers, 3 parents, and even more interesting is he also brought in community members, TPD, the Torrance Library, Chamber of Commerce. That all sounded great. Thank you very much. And Dr. Egan, same thing with social emotional support systems. I'm really happy because my question was, where are the counselors and psychologists? And you covered that the 11 does mainly contain that, which was a concern of mine. So thank you for covering that before I asked. So, and thank you, Mrs. Reagans, for all that time.
Sure. Actually, I just want to reiterate that this really is an introduction of the task force, but it's useful to have feedback like that to say what do we need to add and subtract and what would be an improvement upon what the structure already is. So thank you for that, Mr. Gerson. If you could communicate that actually and remind people even after the fact so that we can make sure that those changes can actually happen. Is there anyone else on the board who had comments to make at this point?
Betty, you want to say anything? Or I can wait for you, Betty, if you want to say anything.
Oh, did you have something to say, Betty? Mrs. Blue?
Well, actually, I was thinking that there's been some talk out there in the press about a second wave coming, or that we're not even on a decline in the curve that we're currently on. I believe that education is best done in an in-person classroom, but just in case a second wave come or an increase in number happens, do we plan to send out another survey to parents and families before putting on the contingent plans?
Yes, absolutely. The survey we sent out was just to give us a guideline of where are people at that point in time. Clearly, a lot of time has passed, and we'll continue to assess and monitor, and probably, by early July, find out once we're able to put some of our plans out there after a few board meetings to be able to share with parents, to then gauge their interest one way or the other, or their feeling on whether they feel, based on some of the information that we're able to put out, again, knowing that we only have the best information available to us at any point in time, and that things change. But as we share that we will absolutely be surveying the parents on a regular basis throughout the summer, probably at least 2 or 3 more times, just to see where they are, because we have to build our program and our schedules around what the students are going to be in which model they would choose, virtual or in person, if that's allowed by the county health department. So yes.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Stowe.
If I can
Mr.
make,
Hahn, did you have something now?
so just a couple of comments. I think, first of all, I want to express my gratitude for everyone on the task force, everybody from all the committees to the subcommittee, because this is going to be a long summer. So my heart goes out to all of you. What you're going to do is not going to be easy. So my hearts are with you. I'm praying for you. You're going to need all the help that you can get, and all the ideas, no matter how stupid they are, just bring them. You know, I think this is where we got to be collaborative. We just got to throw every crazy idea out there so that we can all come to some kind of consensus, because everyone's everywhere on this. But so I appreciate, first of all the task force and what they're trying to do. But I think that what's important to me is this. I think that as we're doing this task force, and this is a public meeting, I think it's important that we shape the narrative. I think the narrative has to be clear here. And what am I saying by this? Is that by having this task force, okay, we're not saying that we're going to prevent COVID. I think that has to be an illusion out there that's not going to be reality. LA County Public Health made it clear that they are not, by having all these guidelines does not mean that there's going to be zero transmission. I specifically asked LA County Public Health, do you expect kids at schools to get COVID? He said, yes. It's not about prevention. It's about mitigating the extent of the spread, mitigating what happens when there is someone that gets it. And so for anyone out there that thinks that by putting all these safety measures in place, all the hybrid model, whatever we put in place to say that we're not going to get it, that's not the narrative that we want to preach. The narrative we want to preach is that we are going to make this as safe as possible. Right now, when you look in our county, like Betty was mentioning, we see infections going up. We see hospitalization going up. Why? Because we're reopening our economy, right? Even though all the guidelines are there, we're reopening the economy, you're seeing the infections rise, we're seeing hospitalization rising. And we have to understand that anyone that comes to a school, they have to understand that reality. And if you're not comfortable with that reality, we have virtual learning. And I think that that narrative has to be shaped so that people have a clear expectation of what they are able to expect when they come to our schools. We are going to make it as safe as possible, but it does not mean that it's 100% guaranteed you're not going to get it. And I think that the public understands that, you know. I think that as long as we communicate clearly what we're trying to do, that if anything were to happen, they cannot say, I can't believe that happened. No, because the narrative was shaped. And that's why when we're making these goals, when we're doing all these things, I think that narrative has to be driving our decision making. So that's why one of the most important things I think that needs to be addressed, I think Jeremy touched upon this, is that the mitigation of what happens when someone gets it. To me, that's the most important thing. Because obviously, if we are saying that there's a good high chance someone's going to get it, to me, that is going to be an important thing. So I asked LA County Public Health. They asked, what can we do to help schools? I said, well, rather than getting us a guideline on that, you need to give us a mandate. For example, if one kid gets it, does we shut down? Is it 10 kids that we shut down? Is it 100 kids we can? Because we cannot say to a parent when they find out a kid got it at our school that we say, we're waiting for LA County Public Health. We're waiting for LA County. That's not a good response. We need some kind of strong directive when it comes to if a child is able to get it. And so my thing is, I think what's important for us as a district, we talk about strategic communication. We talk about clearly explaining to our community, speaking to our community. We need to shape this narrative. We need to shape what they can expect. And that the fact is that no one should expect that no one at our schools will get it. God will, that's what we desire. That's what I hope. But I think that has to be the reality. So I think for me, as we're talking about the task force, the question is, what is the goal? What are we trying to do here? What are we doing all these operations? What are we doing all the instructions for? What are we doing all this for, right? And I think that narrative has to help shape our decisions and what the way we're going to do things in that way. The second question I want to ask Katie right now, though, is I've been seeing a lot of articles about remote learning. Wall Street Journal just came out saying remote learning has failed. And you're seeing a lot of articles about a lot of kids falling back. LAUSD is thinking about doing assessment tests, right, to see where their kids are at before school starts, because the past 3 months, a lot of kids have fallen back. Now, I don't know how do we assess that. I don't know how the Wall Street Journal can make that point, because did they give the kids a test to say that they've fallen behind? I don't know what metric they use to say remote learning has failed, you know. And so my question right now is, have we fallen back, you think, or has the kids regressed because of remote learning?
I mean, the truthful answer is, until we assess, we truly don't know. I think people are making assumptions based on really a wide equity lens of the not in Torrance. We've had a stronger turnout. We've had a stronger engagement level and participation level than many and most. So I think nationwide, they're looking at, what did we see early on? Over 50% of kids didn't even have connectivity to be able to learn. So the assumption would be then what is going on? Do we have students that, for whatever reason, were really struggling with a distance learning model? Of course we did. And we've got our, we have lists, and as it progressed, we have their names. And so at the elementary level, they're by grade, by student. And when we looked at what teachers were telling us, so based on their common formative assessments that they were doing, with kids, that's why we have that. And it's not perfect, but it's something. We have a before school kind of acceleration for the K2, reading group, made up of names of who those kids are. As we learn more and progress, I think many of our committees are waiting with bated breath until we know what the options are, so that they feel that they can move forward and do the work. So I think that, not a short answer, but the short answer is we don't know to what extent we're just hypothesizing that it makes sense that when the struggles that some are telling us, that when we come back and we have a committee working on that, what will that initial assessment look like in language arts, in math? Lastly, a little different, but we are planning on a high school. When I say in person, I don't mean face to face. In person to me means I can see your face. But we're also, because what are we going to do about it? I think is that another piece of that. And we're having two teachers teach a credit recovery, virtual class, where we're going to be looking at some of these instructional strategies so we can learn what's working better. We know that there are going to be that it isn't going to be normal in August. And so how do we take the information we've learned from March to June, and how do we negate it, complement it, make it better, improve upon it, get trained in what those kinds of ways of learning are optimal, and go from there. And so we're hoping that this summer class, yes, we're going to help kids with two of our best and brightest, doing teaching a class, but we're hoping that it's professional development for teachers, so we can publicize what strategies they're using, and teachers can log on and be able to see how this distance learning, how they're doing the distance learning, and gain some additional skills from that.
And I think that's important, because my question then is that here we are going to offer virtual learning, but if it's been proven that kids have fallen behind, it seems like, why are we doing this if it's already been kids are falling behind? That's going to be a question that parents are going to ask. And so I think that's something that we got to think about. We're going to put our best and the brightest, which I have no problem in pursuing that. But I have a feeling the 10% who said that they want their kids at home, they're the ones who said they already know that their kids can handle it. I think that people, that 10%, I think, who couldn't handle it, they wouldn't have said yes to that. I think that they would know. And I think the other factor here too is that, when I look at our county, we're reopening our economy. We're reopening businesses, we're reopening everything. Yet infections are rising, hospitalizations are rising. And I think that the narrative there is because the economic hit is so great that we need to open up. We need to open up, even though there is this risk. The question I have to ask all of us is education that important? You know, we're saying the only reason why we're opening up the economy is because we're saying the economy cannot take it anymore. And I think the same way for me, for education, is to me is more important than economics. And I think that, you know what, I think the risk and reward, the reward is a lot higher for us to reopen up than the risk. To me, that is how important education is. For mental, social, academic, holistically for a child, this is why. And so if people are gonna say they're comfortable with opening up an economy, then you know what? You have to value education that much as well, to me, in that sense. Okay, again, doesn't mean that we're gonna be haphazard. We're gonna do the best that we can. And I think to me is that, again, we wanna shape the narrative. I think that we wanna express why we are doing what we are doing, so that there was a clear expectation from our community. They're saying, wow, these guys, they know that they are not gonna prevent it, but they did everything they can to mitigate the extent of it. Wow, these guys value education to the point where they know that the risk, they're doing all that they can to offer multiple options so that our kids can get educated, not only academically, socially, mentally. I want our district, our community to know that, you know, and that's why I think this task force has been fantastic. It's been wonderful to hear all these little different ideas. And so I just want to encourage everyone that is going through all of this.
Okay, was that it from board members? Anything else? I just want to thank the task force. I know how much work it has been and will continue to be. This is very much a work in progress. This is essentially the beginning, the introduction to our community. We will be working on this. And as Mr. Hahn said, the LA County Department of Public Health, which will sort of give us our laws, our regulations we need to abide by, have not done that yet. And they have said they will do that this week. So many of these things are not actually decisions on our part, but things that we will have to figure out how to make happen if they dictate it to be so. So we will move forward through the process. Any last words, anybody?
Terry, just that is the meeting that I'm attending tomorrow.
Oh, that's tomorrow. The Department of Public Health is supposed to be giving their edicts.
Given a draft.
Their draft.
of their guidance.
And even that's a moving target, because I asked him, so once you do this draft, then how written in stone is that? And he said, well, it can never be written in stone. It might be different tomorrow or the next day or next week. So even that will not be the be all end all. So, all right, we'll hang in there. Okay, so this is not something we need to take action on. It was just a presentation and an information item. There's been a lot of chat actually about how to get involved. You can always write your questions and comments to the superintendent at TUSD.org and or to any of the committee members that you see, or task force members, or the board members can always connect you and try to help you get the information that you're wanting. So please don't feel as though it's not available. We do want you to be informed, and there will be public meetings that we will be having some workshops and more discussion about this as we move forward. So
all of our email addresses are on the TUSD site. So
they are. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
And phone numbers, as far as that goes, you can actually call us too. That's okay too. Okay, so moving on to our next order of business, we do have a public hearing this evening. It's a public hearing on the adoption of the 2020-21 budget. This is a duly noticed public hearing under Education Code Section 52103 on the adoption of the 2020-2021 budget. The adoption of the 2020-2021 budget will appear on the June 15th special meeting of the Board of Education. Any interested persons are now afforded an opportunity to be heard.
We have none, Mrs. Reagans.
Okay. After, we don't have any discussion here, but so I will close the public hearing and we will move on to oral communications.
Mrs. Reagans, I have no comments for oral communications.
Okay, then I will not read the instructions. I'll read them for the discussion action items because I think there may be some comments for that. We will move on to discussion action items. There are instructions to the public regarding comments here. If you wish to address the board, please write to Dr. Mannon at superintendent@TUSD.org. Can you receive those in real time, Dr. Mannon, if they
I
write?
cannot, so they would have had to have submitted prior to the time that the board meeting started.
Okay, but if they
And I
write
have
to you
none.
now, we can
And I
respond
have
to
none.
them. Okay. All right, we can respond to them at a later date if you do
You
want to
can.
write into Dr. Mannon, so please still do that. Actually the rest of that is irrelevant, isn't it? So
It is.
we will move forward. So the first discussion action item is 11.2. It's the adopt the 2020-2021 budget and approve the use of 2020-2021 Propositions 30 and 55 Education Protection Account Entitlement. That's a mouthful. And Dr. Manning, do you want to start us on that?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to remind the board that this is a faux budget. It does not have correct numbers. It is based upon the May revised numbers. As many of you know, the Assembly and the Senate passed a budget today. That budget, I understand, is not going to go to the governor. So we are required by statute to have a budget in place prior to July 1. We have done this many times through the years, more than I would like to even talk about, where we have passed budgets that did not have correct numbers in the budget, because later we would receive a budget from the state of California. In one case, I can recall, and Mr. Lee and I were talking about it, it was October before we actually received a budget from the state of California. So as Dr. Stowe talks about this budget, I think you should just realize that it is a faux budget, and this is the only information we have at this time.
Okay, thank you for that prelude. And now we move on to Dr. Stowe.
Thank you, Dr. Mann and Ms. Reagan's members of the board. Gil is going to again project a presentation here to be able to go through. And like he said, or like Dr. Mann said, this is, it's basically for a presentation for some information about the May revise and about the state of the economy, which we all know, but it'll provide some real numbers behind it. So first, as most districts are doing, and as the recommendation of all the experts in the state, we need to adopt this budget based on the information from the governor's May revise. We don't have real numbers, number one, because the July tax deadline has not yet occurred. And in prior years, obviously, the April 15th tax deadline, the budget would be built on actual tax receipts. And so as personal income tax and sales tax and corporate tax are the big three tax revenue generators in the state, roughly 75% of the revenue in the state comes from those three items. The fact that we have numbers that we don't know exactly what they are is difficult to plan. And secondly, obviously, what Dr. Mann just said, that we do not have a state budget with information that's signed or one that even we think is going to be signed in its current state. And so we wait for Sacramento to hash those out. We are pretty confident, though, that this will be the first time since the inception of the local control funding formula that the Governor Brown will be, or that Governor Brown put in place, that we will be making cuts. And so that is new. Gil, do you have the presentation?
No, I don't. I'm trying to find it here. Can Shelley send it to me?
I'll send it to you right now.
Okay, thanks.
It's attached to the agenda. So, so with today's budget adopted by the legislature and now in negotiations, it's kind of a waiting game. One thing that we do need to be aware of, and just the difference between the May revise and the governor's proposed budget back in January, is there's a gap of roughly, let's see if I can read this, $5 or $6 billion for well, $54 billion. But when looking at the table here, the graph that should be there is we've got a decrease in revenues. There you go. Keep going, Gil. Right there. So you can see the difference in what the estimated revenue was going to be versus and this slide shows the Prop 98 portion of the budget, and so there's a significant decrease there. And if you go to the next slide, it shows even better graphically how the green is what the governor's January budget was projecting for 1920 and 2021, and then the red is the new May revise provision. So you have quite a bit of a gap, $15 billion there, roughly, in Prop 98 funding fall off in the 2021 school year. So what are some of the elements of the governor's May revise? Cash deferrals. These were used in the Great Recession and proposed to be used again. This is where the governor or the state pushes off, does not pay us in the current fiscal year. They'll pay us in the next fiscal year, and we are okay if the deferrals are go into place now in June to July. If the deferral from the April, May, and June payments is pushed into July of 2021, we may well need to do some borrowing that we haven't done before, and so that is certainly an option that we will look at next spring. The next slide, when we see the governor's budget proposal, or excuse me, the May revise, this actually was a help for us. There was some help in the May revise to the benefit of about $2.8 million in additional payments by the state to reduce the CalSTRS and CalPERS employer paid rates for the 2021 and 21-22 school year. So this is helpful to us in our planning. The next slide is increased special education funding, which actually was improved or included in our second interim back in March. We were preparing for this. Mm-hmm. So the learning loss mitigation. So this is this is the CARES Act funding, and we've heard a lot about this. The governor proposed to apply $1.5 billion of this $4.4 billion received from the federal government to special education, and our estimate of that is about $5.3 million. It is not included in our current budget because we're still not sure the rules on how to spend this. There was in the governor's May revise, there's a deadline of December 30th in which to spend this money. And so we also are working with Dr. Crumpy and the special education team on any additional services that and supports that would need to be provided to make up for learning loss with some of our special education students. And so, this $5.3 million could very well be utilized for making up that lost learning. And so therefore, we don't have the expenditure to balance out the revenue. And so we did not include that in the proposed budget. This next section, this is a point of contention within the May revise and the budget passed by the legislature. There's an additional $2.9 billion that was said that the governor was going to distribute only to concentration grant districts. You know that Torrance, we receive base grant funding, and we receive some supplemental funding for our students who are limited English, low income, or foster youth. But we do not receive concentration grants because we do not have 55% or more of our students meeting that criteria. And so if all 2.9 billion of this is allocated to concentration grant districts, as the governor's May revise stated, we would be getting $0. And this is something that I know you all and our advocates in Sacramento, our legislators are fighting for, to make sure that all districts receive some of these dollars, because we all have learning loss mitigation. We all have students that deserve to receive part of this funding, and it's not just concentration grant districts. Other programs that are being hit by the governor's May revise, the supplemental grant, those are being reduced. In fact, ours was going to go down a little bit anyway, because we have fewer students that are English learners, low income, or foster youth than in the previous year. There's a slight hit to adult ed and career technical education, as well as preschool program. So as always with the budget and the first and second interims, we're always making assumptions based on the information provided by the state. And so the statutory COLA has continued to be maintained there in the out years. The deficit factor, so I'll just take 2021 as an example. The 2.31 COLA was applied and then discounted by 10%. So the actual cut is about 8%. Now, as we move forward in future years, even though we're not going to be receiving the COLA, we still build it in as a deficit factor. And so it's technically money that the state would owe us. So it looks like it's a bigger cut in those out years. But we don't know the 21, 22, 22, 23 budgets. And so the big number there for you to see based on the May revise is that $17 million cut or reduction at the bottom of the 2021 year column. And that represents the reduced revenue that we will receive. So here are additional assumptions that we need to make. Obviously, this PERS and STIRS rate, we benefited from that slightly, so you can see those adjustments. We have some additional special education funding, and then the lottery funds we estimate will be lower than what they were in previous years. And we have not yet had any negotiation settlement with associations as it relates to finances. So the multi-year projection, this does not include any reductions that we would make. You see an ending fund balance in the 2021 school year of $12.5 million, going out to the third year of a budget or of ending fund balance of negative $53 million. Obviously, we are going to deal with it before that, but we just need some real numbers to base it on. And then also part of our multi-year projection on the next slide, we have funds that are committed for textbooks, and we still have some one-time Common Core money that we've been spending very frugally as we need to implement new things and buy new materials for teachers and to implement curriculum in the classroom, as well as the slight little bit reserve that we have for the supplemental funded students, and that's the bottom row. So moving to the multi-year projection, again, the 21-22 and 22-23 year those are too far out for us to even really think about right now. We're just looking at 2021. And if we were to use this current budget with no reductions, we would have a reserve of 0.94, reserve for economic uncertainty. Remember, the state requirement is 3%. So we are $5.3 million below the 3% reserve with this adopted budget. And again, know that we will address these issues with the board as we move forward into seeing what the real numbers may be. And so when we look at the legislature's proposal compared to the governor's May revise, the legislature's proposal, very favorable to Torrance Unified and all districts. It included the 2.31 cost of living adjustment, no deficit factor. It would have resulted in a increase in funding of the base grant of $20 million and $9.5 million in that those learning loss funds, right? That's the 2.9 billion that the governor originally has said that it's going to go only to concentration districts. So although that $9.5 million would be one-time money, it would certainly make a significant impact in our budget to prevent some cuts here in the coming years. So finally, we've got some risk areas where we look at the enrollment and attendance. Again, I think there are a lot of districts that are concerned about this. We are hoping that part of the legislation that gets passed proposes to hold districts harmless on their enrollment. Maybe even instead of funding based on average daily attendance, fund districts based on enrollment. That would help as well because of the unknowns. Additional unknowns that we are just uncertain as to what the impact will be are additional costs for getting school back up and running, additional personnel, possibly personal protective equipment in order to make that happen. We have had to this spring and through summer cancel any of our local revenue opportunities for leases and rental of our facilities. And so we've had to curtail those, and then also the decrease in lottery revenues that we mentioned before. So what we would like is for the board to adopt this budget, knowing that we have a commitment to maintain fiscal solvency at the required state reserve level of 3%. We will be bringing back within 45 days, this is statute, any budget revisions following state budget adoption, and that we will take into consideration any possible August revisions that we're anticipating. Again, we want to see what the actual budget that gets signed by the governor will be, but then we do anticipate an August revise for the first time where it will be based on actual income tax receipts from the July 15th deadline. So that was a much longer than normal presentation. Again, I recommend to the board that we have a meeting on June 29th to not just discuss the reopening details, but further discussion around the budget as well.
Okay, wow. Thank you, Dr. Stowe. That certainly is a very mixed kind of negative bag. And I neglected actually to get a motion and a second for adoption of the budget. Can I get that motion and second, and then we can have discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions, issues anyone wants to raise?
There was an interesting, thank you. There was an interesting article in EdSource. I can't remember who forwarded it to me, but it talked about the CARES Act. Dr. Stowe was discussing the HEROES Act, the CARES Act too. But because of CARES Act, it detailed how Torrance Unified only got $76 per student, while LA Unified got $665 per student. And even though there would be that kind of difference again with the HEROES Act under the state legislator's budget, we see how we still would get $9 million. And under the governor's proposal to only support concentration grants, which is basically LA Unified again, based on the advice I was hearing from some of our state legislators, it might be time for other stakeholders in our district. I know Manhattan Beach has started a write-in campaign that perhaps our community wants to send to the governor a letter detailing that all districts are suffering, all districts have people working for them, all districts have students who are suffering from learning loss, and personal protective equipment is not a different cost for different children. It's the same cost for all. And perhaps push some of the issues to say that Torrance Unified and other districts who do not receive concentration grants deserve fair funding as well, and to not leave us in the cold on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Comments, questions?
And I agree with Jeremy on this. I think that, go ahead.
Okay,
Don.
Mr. Hahn, go ahead.
No, I agree with Jeremy. I think that'd be important that if everyone can write letters to the state legislature or wherever it may be to ensure that we get this fair funding. I think it's something that we can do. It's all that we can do at a time like this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee, did you have something to add?
Nothing that, you know, we'll probably get a little deeper in it in the 29th and we see the numbers.
Okay. And Mrs. Liu, anything? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adopt the 2020-21 budget and approve the use of the 2021 Propositions 30 and 55 Education Protection Account Entitlement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Yeah, I don't like this budget, but that's what we're stuck with right now.
We'll like it when we see the real numbers in the 29th.
I hope so. I hope it's better than what it looks right now. So moving on to item 11.3, approval of the COVID-19 written report to the community. Dr. Crumpy, I believe.
You need a motion?
Can I get a motion a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Dr. Crumpy.
Thank you. Traditionally, you may remember that we present our LCAP at our June meeting alongside the proposed budget. Because of COVID-19, the governor suspended the 2020 to 2023 LCAP and is instead requiring a one-year LCAP that will be approved this December. In lieu of the LCAP, we were required to develop a short COVID operations report explaining how COVID-19 changed our program offerings to students. Once approved, we will submit to the County Office of Education. It's due to them by July 1st, and then we will post it on our website.
Okay. Comments, questions, anyone?
Just thank you, Dr. McDowell. It's the first large report that I've gotten to see from him since he took on the job.
It's true. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the COVID-19 written report to the community. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Moving on to 11.4, adoption of resolution to initiate a transition to a by-trustee area election system commencing with the 2022 Board of Education election and statement of intent to seek a waiver of the election requirement from the State Board of Education. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so before we have discussion, I just want to say that as we move through the process of pursuing this, which is moving to a trustee area election, we will be having public meetings for input from our community. So this is not, again, this is not the end, it's the beginning of the process, and we will follow through with those meetings as we move forward. Any questions, comments? Anybody? Dr. Stowe, did you want to speak to this? No? Dr. Mannon? Anybody?
Well, I mean, I can say a couple of things. I mean, this is literally the same attorney that brought the action against the city attorney, the city of Torrance. This is his little cottage industry where he extorts money from various organizations. The city of Torrance determined that there's no, the boundaries really weren't based on certain ethnic groups when certain places because it's pretty spread out in Torrance. So, I mean, this is extortion, for lack of a better word, but unfortunately, the state of California equal opportunity laws allows him to do this. So we're just next in line, and there'll be lots of people after us, I am sure. We'll get through this process. We'll find the correct lines that serve the community best, and we'll get them done. And they will be active not in the November 2020 election, but the new lines will be active in the November of 2022 election.
Thank you for saying all that, Don. Yeah, when I read his letter and saw factually inaccurate information in it, it's so frustrating to know that with all the case law he's created that, you know, we have to do it. But I'm really, you know, I love being in Torrance. We are, as you said, very well integrated. We don't have pockets. And I hope that even as we have to move to districts, that all of us, you know, I think the five of us work really well together. We disagree with each other a lot, but we are always friendly and respectful and collegial. And I love working with you guys. We're already spread out. We have North, West, South, and 2 Central people already here. And so I appreciate working with you. And I hope that future people who join our board are the same way and work toward all of Torrance Unified, even though we will be voted for on in districts. So thank you.
And the bottom line is it's going to cost us some money and some time and effort at a time when we have little of all of those things to give. So that's difficult for me to see, but it's what we've got to do at this point.
Yep.
So further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second that we approve adoption of the resolution to initiate a transition to a by-trustee area election system. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Now we have one more discussion action item, item 11.5, which is approval of district signage. I move to approve that item, and we'll take a second.
And talk a little bit about the item.
Wait, did I get a second?
Yeah.
Okay, Betty did. Okay. All right, Mr. Lee.
Dr. Mannon's looking rather confused there because it's,
Yes.
I got that too. That's the cranky. Anyway, I am going to read this item. In recognition of Dr. Mannon's nearly 47 years in service to public education, including leading the Torrance Unified School District since 2005, authorization is requested to name the Torrance Unified School Aquatic Center the Dr. George Mannon Aquatic Center effective June 16, 2020. Throughout the appointment as superintendent of schools, Dr. Mannon has been actively involved in all aspects of public education, including both instruction for all learners and school finance. He is well known for his frequent classroom visits to all schools throughout the district, as well as to its operational facilities. Dr. Mannon successfully led the passage of 4 school bond measures, Y, Z, T, and U. In 2008, measures Y and Z passed with overwhelming community support. Measure Y passed with 74% of the vote. Measure Z with 71% of the vote. Measure Y funds were used to upgrade and modernize existing classrooms and J.H. Hall Middle School. Measure Z funds were used to expand athletic and other extracurricular facilities for students and community. In 2014, Torrance voters came together once again and voted to approve $194 million in essential bond dollars, measures T and U, which passed with a 60% of the vote. Measure T addressed the security and technology needs of the district. Measure U enabled the district to improve playgrounds, physical education facilities, all schools, and provided funds to build the new district aquatic center. In addition, Dr. Mannon has been involved in community affairs through his membership in various educational and service organizations. He is an active member of Rotary International, was president of the Tustin Rotary Club from 1999 to 2000. Dr. Mannon serves as a member of the Torrance YMCA Board of Managers, Board of the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce, and on the advisory board of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. The Board of Education extends its best wishes to Dr. Mannon upon his retirement from Torrance Unified School District at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 year. And stay there. Just stay there, George. Don't just.
While Dr. Mannon is staying there and Mr. Lee is moving, I will modify my motion that rather than just modify the signage, that we modify the signage to read for the Torrance Aquatic Center for TUSD, that it be the Dr. George Mannon Aquatic Center. So that is the motion before us. So I have a second for that modified motion.
Okay.
All right. So in just a moment, Dr. Mannon, you should be seeing something happening in the room where you are. The room where it happens. Let's see if it happens there or not.
Dr. Mannon, does anyone else have the privilege of being able to talk to you both as having been your employee and as one of your school board members?
No. Oh, Mr. Lee is here.
Yes, he is.
Look at that.
Yay!
He's got other folks with him.
Get close up on that.
Wow.
There it is.
That's
That's
beautiful.
And maintain social distancing in some way.
Yes.
Jesus, I just about broke it. There you go.
Lee,
Well,
be
I am
careful.
humbled. And I'm also surprised because I know all of you guys that you could keep a secret, especially the people standing here in the room from Balfour Beatty that I know all of them.
We need to see those people. Where are they? Let's pan over. Oh my gosh. How about some introductions, Mr. Lee? Can he hear us?
Can you, Terry asked that you introduce the Balfour Beatty people, Mr. Lee.
Hard. John Bernardi. Tom Slagle. Don Ron. Charlie Brown. Emily.
Okay. Did you get that, Mrs. Reagans?
I did. And why are they there, Mr. Lee?
Pardon me?
Why are they there, Mr. Lee?
They helped immeasurably with all of this, both in the designing of the sign and certainly the poster. Mr. Slagle spent months on that. And then also, big assist to Shelley for getting it on the agenda without Dr. Mannon knowing about it.
Yes.
And a big help to Nancy for helping with all of this as well, your wife. So it's a pretty small circle of people who knew about it, so that's why it remained a secret. And it's much deserved.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much from all of you.
And Dr.
Okay. How
Mannon,
do you
the
wanna
new
do that?
sign at the Aquatic Center.
You guys can spread out behind him.
6 feet apart or whatever.
I've been doing this for a while, so we can manage. How about you?
I just want to make sure everybody knows that the new sign at the Aquatic Center is what Dr. Mannon is holding. It's a poster of what the new sign will actually look like.
Charlie, I can't see you.
Gotta see Charlie.
If you can't see me, I can't see you.
So that's social distancing. I'm very impressed. That is our boardroom. That's almost empty, everybody. That's nice, actually. Did any other Balfour people have anything they wanted to say? Can anyone hear me in the boardroom?
Been a great.
It's been a
Great
long
ride,
time,
and
John.
It is, and just good luck in the future. So just
Thank you.
and
Wish you guys the best.
all right,
Yours
thank you.
best.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, I can't believe we actually pulled that off, Dr. Mannon.
I know, that's a wow.
That was a lot of work, and I actually have to
I
thank
know, it had to be.
Mr. Lee did the lion's share of the arranging for that, so I have to thank him for doing all of that interacting and planning and arranging. So, thank you.
Well, thanks to all of you. It's a great honor, one that I certainly didn't expect.
Well, it's very deserving. If not for you, we would not have the aquatic center. I have no doubt in my mind, so.
Well, it was a team approach. We won because we were a team.
Absolutely true. And the community was part of that team.
Absolutely.
I have to say that too, thanks to the voters in Torrance for making it happen and for allowing Dr. Mannon to bring that to fruition. So thank you, Mr. Lee. Great job.
Thanks
Well
to
done.
all of you.
I'm glad you didn't break it. That's a good thing. All right. Anything else to add, Don, before we end?
Yeah, thank you.
No, I mean, it was just everybody kept the secret. Thanks to fellow board members. All the cabinet had a little hand in all of this, getting it put together. I think we should keep a video of Dr. Mannon looking at his agenda, trying to find the item.
That is true. I was.
I was.
I did it at Shelley's. So glad it came out well.
Good job.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. All right. So I think we actually need to take a vote. Do we? Should we vote? I have a motion and a second that we alter the district signage at the Aquatic Center to be the George Mannon Aquatic Center. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. It's official. Thank you.
Well,
Dr.
thanks for voting yes.
Yes, I know. I hope. Okay, so moving on, we do have a consent agenda that we do need to address this evening of a number of items.
And Madam President, I have one item requested to be pulled, and I'll explain that. It's item 17.5.
Okay, and I actually want to pull item 18.13 too.
Oh, good. And I actually want to pull 18.12.
12?
12 and
Okay.
18.30.
And 18.30?
Correct.
Okay,
And I'll make a motion to approve everything else on the consent calendar.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve all consent items except 17.5, 18.12, 18.13, and 18.30. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we will move forward. Dr. Mannon, 17.5.
I received an email from Julie Schenkel, and Julie and I did have subsequent emails. She was asking, what does it mean to declare employee salaries indefinite? And what is the purpose of the declaration and what are the effects? Have you notified employee groups of your intent to do this or input? This is just a mechanical operation. It's one that districts are required to do if in fact, excuse me, if in fact you have not settled with all your associations. So you have to do that, and all county offices require that this be done. This actually allows school districts to go back into the previous year. For example, you might in the future negotiate something for 1920. If you don't have this particular item, you could not go back into 1920, or there could be some sort of retro. So it's commonplace. We've done it a lot in our district because we haven't had settlements. So at this time of the year. So Ms. Schenkel understands that after we had our discussion, but she wanted me to explain that, and I told her I would be happy to do so.
Okay, can I get a motion and a second to approve that item?
So moved.
Yes.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve declaration of indefinite salaries for retroactive pay for the 2020-2021 school year. It is a weird item, the way it sounds.
Well, it's written
All
that
those
way
in-
because of statute.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving on to 18.12, that's Mr. Lee.
Yes. I bring this up from time to time. This probably isn't the best year to bring it up, but the first thing is, just so you know, we raised our self-insurance retention from 100,000 to $250,000 per claim. Self-insured retention is nothing more than the deductible on a liability policy. So it'd be a deductible on property insurance, but on liability, it's called self-insurance retention. Why? I don't know. We just like to complicate things, but that's what it is. So it's an extra $150,000. I touched base with Dr. Stowe earlier. We may want to set our reserves up a little bit differently to get a little bit more exposure. But it's saved in excess of $350,000 a year, so it was a good thing. So that was really it. The other question is, we do not have earthquake insurance on our buildings, which we're not uncommon. Most entities our size do not. But I guess maybe as my last time of looking at these, can we request Keenan or whoever you want to get us at least a rough estimate of what earthquake insurance would be on, you buy it in a bag. So you buy 20 or 30 or $100 million worth of coverage. So see if they can come up with some sort of quote, and maybe the board may want to consider it in the future.
Sure, absolutely. And with the increase in insurance rates, which is why we went to increasing the self-insured retention, because it reduced the premium, we can take some of that savings and set that money aside in case we have a large claim. When looking at the numbers over the past 10 years, it looked like it would be beneficial to us if we did increase the SIR, which reduces premiums over time. So we will set some of that aside, and I will get you, Mr. Lee, and the rest of the board an insurance quote on earthquake insurance.
Thank you. My battery's going dead. I think
Uh-oh. Okay, any other comments, questions on that one?
No,
all right.
Improve.
Okay, second, anybody?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve District Excess Property Liability Insurance Program with Alliant Insurance Services for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. The next one is 18.13. That's one I wanted to pull. It's approval of health benefit rates for Torrance Unified School District employees for the 2020-2021 plan year. I felt the need to highlight this item because we've actually sort of hit a hallmark here that these health benefit rates, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Stowe, represent no change from the previous year, and no change from the year before that, and no change from the year before that, and no change from the year before that. So this is the 5th year that we have maintained the cost of our health benefits for our employees. I just want people to recognize that and to be aware of that. And I think that is due to the hard work of the insurance committee in terms of managing the funds well and distributing them and making them work for the employees in the school district. Did you have anything to add to that, Dr. Stowe?
I do not. I just echo your congratulations, and it's a team effort to make sure that it can stay the same. So we know it won't last forever, and we will work next year to again try to put the money back to the employees who pay into it.
Yes, and I hope that the employees can recognize that that's savings that we are working for them for their benefit. So I am so excited that we can do that for the 5th year in a row. I can't think of another entity or business that has been able to maintain their health benefits at the same rate for 5 years running, especially in this day and time. So with that, I move for approval of the health benefit rates for TUSD.
So moved.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that one is approved too. And last but not least is 18.30. That is Mr. Lee, approve the extension of ground leases for North Torrance Girls Softball League, North Torrance Little League, and Torrance Girls Softball League.
I was looking at the leases, and they're all, I mean, they basically do the same thing on our sites, and that's good. But their leases are all different. Some people pay water. Some people are supposed to pay water and haven't paid water. Some people have, some people have leases on some things and not on other things. I think as we look at this going forward, because I know there was some conversation from, I think it's centered from Mr. Hahn, that that we need to manage our real estate a little differently. I think probably a place where we can start is at least standardize all these relationships, or at least articulate why they're different, and maybe formalize them a little bit more. I guess that's what it is. Seems like they're kind of casual, and just so we know what we got and we can manage the process a little better, especially when we're looking at other opportunities where our field's going forward. If we get the infrastructure together to do that, it will probably help us a lot in the future.
Okay, we will look at that. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will make a motion
Since you pulled this, there are a couple of things, because
Can we get a motion in a second, then we'll discuss?
sure.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Gerson.
Well, first of all, my last meeting with Dr. Ferrer and my employer had a meeting with her a couple weeks ago that echoed the same thing. My first question is, currently, public health has said, one, that schools' properties should be for the purposes of our mission of educating students and childcare, and that things outside of that with the community, that at this point, it's not recommended by public health, and will probably might be reflected in the guidelines that's coming out. And in particular, she also talked about athletics, and she said the positive ones that she would expect, not that they're positive sports, but her positive view toward certain sports like cross country, swim, golf, those that already have natural distancing are a positive, but her a lack of desire to talk about the team sports that have contact. And she said, don't talk to me about football or basketball when I was on with her. And when my employer was on, she brought up soccer and baseball and included those two in that. So I'm also curious how that affects things going forward for community organizations, especially all the sports organizations who are going to be using our fields. I assume we don't charge them if they're not using it, but I don't know. So if you could answer all those questions, please, Dr. Stowe.
Sure. Well, we haven't had discussion, we've little discussion, but we haven't allowed, and I don't think any other local districts are allowing outside groups to use the facility. We aren't even allowing our own groups to use the facilities at this point in time. That'll be something that we'll need to address as we move forward with, with the guidance from the county, and certainly bringing that information to the board. As far as charging groups, most groups, the nonprofits, the AYSOs, the Little Leagues, they don't pay for use of facilities. But again, back in April, when it looked like this was going to go longer, we canceled all permits through August. And we should we open something up again, we've been in contact with a lot of the outside users. They're asking every day. We're getting emails from different groups if we're going to be reopening soon, which we tell them at this point in time we're not. So, we will address that when it comes time, and I'll provide information to the board on that.
Thank you.
Well, one other thing I forgot was, and this is an unintended consequence of the last 3 months, our fields are in great shape. We did exactly what he told us to do. It's just we didn't know we were going to do it. So I'm sure our fields are like in incredibly good shape, and they'll be ready when people want to use them.
When people are allowed to use them by public health.
That's right. They're allowed to use them. So,
But he was right. Letting them go fallow did make a difference. So that was a good thing. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the ground leases. for the North Torrance softball, Little League, and Torrance girls softball. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. That takes us through to the end of consent. We do have a board calendar in the information section. Check out the new and ever-changing set of dates, etc., for things coming up in the near future for the board and our school community. And we do have some comments from members of the board. From the board's representative to SoCal Rock is Mr. Hahn. What's happening there?
So we just had our board meeting. Obviously, like Dr. Manna mentioned earlier, school services give us their 5 possibilities. And it really looks like it is not going to be able to self-sustain itself. And so Dr. Halar and others the superintendents have met and discussed about possibilities. And a big possibility is to talk about El Camino's possible role in this. I can't go into further details about that because they're in discussions, but something is going to have to happen because we just cannot continue to sustain itself. And so, so that's been a big discussion. And I think that we all want to have our voices to be heard. What does that look like? Does it look like that they just take over? Does it look like we lease it to them? There's a lot of questions. And so, but I think that these are going to be, as much as we have to discuss the things for Torrance Unified, these are going to be some severe discussions coming up over the summer. But Al Murasachi has been very involved and very helpful trying to find solutions. And I'm grateful for that. And I think, again, we believe in the vision and we believe in what SoCal Rock is all about. And so we want to see it continue. One of the questions that they did ask is, has there been any discussion of any of the school districts cutting back on SoCal Rock? And so I wasn't really sure because we haven't really discussed it. And so I'm not sure, Dr. Stowe, if you have any input on that, on the budget. Are we going to cut or are we going to maintain what we're continuing to do? Are we going to pull back? That was a question that they asked. And so I just didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, I mean, the number of students that go to SoCal Rock are based on those that want to take those classes from the high schools. If we offer many of the programs on our campuses that we used to send over there, but we offer many of those classes here. And so if it's an option to take it on the campus, then, like the Project Lead the Way courses and those were significant in bringing students back to our campus and allowing our schools to be centers for those kinds of pathway courses. And so it's not that we're not sending students, just there are many options on our campuses that students are choosing over the options over at the center.
But quick question then, are we still going to receive the CTE funding as well for the school district, or is that going to be part of the state budget cuts? I know that
the CTE money that will still continue. That's part of the LCFF, and then we SoCal Rock sends us a bill for the number of students that take classes there, and then we pay that out of those funds. So that's how that's handled. So it's the what was part of the potential cut in the May revise was the career technical education incentive grant, the CTIG funds, which was proposed to be cut 51%.
Yeah.
So that's my report.
So Mr. Hahn, in the short run, they aren't operating, correct? And how do they anticipate being able to come back with their hands-on curriculums?
So that's what they're looking at right now. So obviously they shut down same time around April, and they are looking to see how they're also going to reopen too, what classes. We just entered an MOU with Torrance Memorial because we have those externships where students are going to have to go to the hospital, but the hospital wants you to know that if you send your kids there, we do have COVID patients. So those are kind of the things that they're discussing and working with. And so again, these are all just as much as we're trying to figure out how we're going to open up. They're determining how they're going to open as well.
Okay, Okay, any other comments from board members today?
I've got some orals.
Okay, go ahead,
Um,
Mr. Lee.
I got to go, since we last met, I got to participate in and see a virtual graduation that ended up at the Rhodium Drive-In. I want to get my hats off to whoever in this district came up with that idea. And basically, it was an idea that came up a couple of months ago, but nobody knew if we could do it, and we kept going back to it. And there was some persistency in the management of this organization to put all this together, and then put it together in like what, 2 weeks or 10 days. They put it all together. So my hat's off to everybody in the district for pulling this off. It wasn't easy. Thank you to the Torrance Police Department for getting a lot of cars in and out of the Rhodium at night. Thanks to the videographer that got it up on the screen and made it look the way it was supposed to look, and that was great. Thanks to the parents for coming. They were all pretty full. And for my last graduation, it was rather memorable, and I enjoyed it. And it's probably part of the job that, as I like to say, it's probably the only part of the job that's fun. And so it was a great time, and just thank you to everybody. And then one other thing was, and I think it's going to be on city cable maybe this week or next, is don't miss Dr. Mannon's bye-bye video. That's to watch. It's very well produced by the City of Torrance's cable TV office. Michael Smith is the head of it, and I want to give a big shout out to everybody there for doing an incredibly outstanding job on that. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
It's on the district Facebook page.
Okay. That's me.
That was it? Okay, Mr. Gerson?
So, I don't know, the last couple of weeks we've been in so many meetings, but it was my first time to hear from Dr. Gilchick. So he works at LA County Public Health. He's their chief over child and adolescents. And so it was interesting after hearing Dr. Ferrer a couple times to hear her child and adolescent specialist speak. I can't say that I learned anything new, but it was interesting just hearing again from him a lot of the things that we know about infection rates in children and adolescents, and how that translates and what they're still trying to learn. Another interesting thing is I got to participate in Orange County's version. A couple of UCI professors spoke, as well as the Orange County Office of Education superintendent, and someone from the Orange County Department of Public Health. And a lot of the stuff we discussed today is the exact same thing that they're discussing in Orange County. Although I did find it interesting, some information that they added. I knew about a few of the countries that reopened schools and had to reclose. Like I'd heard about South Korea, Singapore, and Israel, but they added France and Sweden to the list, which was interesting. Denmark schools never reclosed. Right. They moved to hourly hand washing and hand sanitization. And the side effect was they now have kids with eczema. So there's consequences for every action. But so many of the things we discussed, distance learning inequities, summer gains. It was interesting. So they're expecting summer gains in reading in affluent homes, that children will actually do more reading in the absence of school, that their reading scores would go up, but their math and science would still drop. That was fascinating. And they were estimating a loss of 1/2 to 3/4 of a year in learning loss by the time school starts in the fall. And talked about using PE in constructive ways, treating schools as a healthy place, a lot of what Mr. Hahn already said today, talking about teachers who are afraid to teach and what to do. And they're creating Parent as an Educator Forum for those who are going to be distance learning or virtual learning with their children, but creating a forum for those parents to give them what we would call professional development to help them become better at it. So all some interesting stuff that I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else,
Yeah.
Mr. Hahn?
Hi, Betty.
You can go ahead if you want.
I guess for me, I guess I'll just finish off this here, just for myself. First of all, I also want to congratulate all the graduates and all the schools that have done an amazing job with graduations. A special shout out for South High, because I'm the one that was there for South High graduation. Their car parade was awesome. It was absolutely amazing. And I have to give a shout out especially for them, because that car parade was 5 hours. It was a long car parade, but it was an awesome one. But those counselors and those teachers that were there, they finished all the way to make it special for every kid. So same thing. Thank you, Torrance Police, to maintain the traffic. I know the line was going all the way down PCH. It was kind of nuts, but absolutely wonderful. I was there at the Rhodium for South High, and to see my friend's daughter graduate, it was beautiful. We made the most of it, and that's a testimony to everyone here, all the cabinet, all the principal, everyone, every school that was ever involved in any kind of graduation. Thank you. Dr. Manning knows how much we fought to have any type of graduation. I've been fighting for in-person graduation till the very end, but I didn't get what I wanted, but close enough, and it was fantastic. So Dr. Manning, thank you for being that voice to say, hey, we're gonna stick it out and see what can happen, and we did. And so we have to be proud. Torrance Unified needs to be proud of the way that we did our graduations, and so I want to express that. And so it's to celebrate all of our kids. But thinking about the kids, I also want to, again, congratulate Jenna Murata. So glad that she's a new West High principal. We wish you the best. We're excited for you, and I think West High is in good hands. But this is one of the things that I really wanted to address today. Was last week, one of our middle schools, Madrona Middle School kids, took the bold action to create an Instagram video of their stance to speak about the injustice and the racism in our society. They wanted their voices to be part of the dialogue. And whether you agree with their opinion or not, they were willing to take a stand to express their beliefs. And when I saw these kids, it takes courage to speak out, especially at a time like this where there is so much anger, so much emotions. And that's exactly what they did. And I applaud them. They were not willing to sit still, but they took action. But their action was not one of violence, but one of peace, one of creativity, one of a voice. And their voice was united. As one child held a sign that said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. And they were not willing to be neutral. They were not willing to take the side of the oppressor. And it's this courage and boldness that I was absolutely proud of. And I want to applaud them. These students are absolutely amazing. And I'm sure that they knew and they wanted their voice to be heard. It'd been so easy for them to take down that Instagram post, but they said, no, we feel like this is our voice. And one of the things about education, that's what we want the kids to do. We want kids to be able to formulate their own opinions and to be able to express themselves with those opinions. And they did. And I was absolutely amazed. So I want to give a shout out to Madrona Middle School and the ASB there for their courage, for their voice, and for their willing to make a difference. And I want to keep on encouraging that with all our students. That, as you form your own opinions, as you go on in life, that you would speak out. And that's how we make our world a better place. We need to have different opinions. We need to have dialogue. We need to come together and to talk these things out. And that's why one of the things I experienced this week in the Torrance is that when we had that protest, even in Torrance, do you know who was gathered in front of City Hall? It was students that were there, putting up their signs. And I think it's a beautiful sight for me to see when you see students who are willing to stand up and to be that voice. And so I applaud our Madrona students in every way. And so.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. Very nice. Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. It says my speaker is not working, but it appears that it is actually. Mrs. Liu, did you have something to add?
Just quickly, I very much agree with my colleagues, and I want to wish the class of 2020 a wonderful graduation. Congratulations. You guys had a very unusual graduation in this very unusual year. with the virtual graduation at the Rhodium Drive-In Theater, your faces were blown up to 50 feet large, wide, and your names were announced throughout the whole theater, the drive-in. So it's quite an unusual graduation you had, but a very special one. And I want to wish you all the best of luck going off to college or work or trade school or another way. Just kudos to you all for persevering through the quarantine and adapting to distance learning. And with your skills, I think you can adapt to college schools too, college too. So good luck and have a great summer.
Thank you for that. And I agree, we are definitely living history. There will never be a graduation season like this one again, we hope. Yeah, and that so that this was quite an unusual and unique situation for all of them. So I got to see North High at the Rhodium too, and it was really exciting for the kids. But I wanted to say something about their car parade, that I sat at somebody's house in the neighborhood. And so as they were parading around the neighborhood, all of these people came out and were cheering for them, like at a real parade along the parade route. It was just so inspiring. I hadn't anticipated the community getting involved like that. So that was really pretty neat. I do have some classified anniversaries. I don't want to forget today to recognize. We have some classified employees who have 10 years of accredited service with TUSD, and that's Diane Brooks and Christina Calandrino. We have some folks with 15 years of accredited service with the district, and that's Jorge Barrios, Matthew Blandon, Marian Estrada, Mariano Lopez, Deborah Moorfield, Irma Esepian, Christina Paredes, Sharon Smith, and Elisa Van Hook. And for 20 years of accredited service, I have Lai Mai Ada Siu. And for 25 years of accredited service is Teresa Evans, Terry Evans at the district office. So those wonderful people continue to serve our kids. In fact, all of those people are still at work while we've been closed down, and continue to be with our children. So, and helping our schools and our kids to keep things going. And that's our whole thing, is to do the best for the kids that we can do. So with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Congratulations, Dr. Mannon.
Congratulations, Dr. Mannon.
Congratulations.
Good night.